Hey,
Hey,
everybody.
family.
Guess what?
What?
We just got a question. We just got a question.
I'm not singing
We
that.
just...
We did get a question though, but I'm not
Blues
singing it. You
Clues.
can
You
sing it.
guys
Go ahead.
got the Blues
Go ahead,
Clues
sing it.
reference. You were with me. So thank you so much for that. Listen, but we are excited. We got a question today, and we wanted to make sure we jumped in and responded quickly. Okay. So this question is about ideas or ways to get through the first few years of marriage, particularly as it relates to trouble communicating and understanding each other. One great question. Thank you
Great
so much
question.
for
Thank you.
submitting it. And just know it is common to struggle with communicating, and not just the first few years of marriage. Sometimes you just, as much as you evolve and you grow, communication is key. And so as long as you're evolving and growing, you're going to have to keep learning and understanding one another. So it is something that's always going to come up. So one of the things we'd like to share today is that in order for you to properly move forward, sometimes it's better to take a step and go backwards. So what do we mean by going backwards?
So essentially, by going backward, we mean going back and kind of doing a study of the type of communication culture your mate comes from. Just taking the time to understand what shaped them, what shaped their communication style, what type of family atmosphere they had, and all those things that attributed to the way they speak, the way they respond to the people around them, and the way they express themselves.
Yes. So we have an assignment for you today. We have homework for you. What we want you to do is we want you to take some time, sit down with one another, and we want you guys to answer the following questions. What we're hoping is that when you start sharing your responses, that you both listen to understand one another. Okay?
And though you may have spent some time around his or her family since you've been together, you really don't know what it was like growing up. So the first question would just be, how was it? What was the communication style within your family? What was the communication culture like? Also, did they skirt around issues, or were they comfortable confronting things head on? Were they able to sit down and have just open and honest dialogue between each other? Because a lot of families don't.
Right.
Also, were they verbally abused? Did they come from an abusive household where words were used to damage and they were kind of thrown out recklessly, and they may have been scarred by some of those things? Was it a loud family? Was it a soft-spoken family?
Yes.
Different families have different
Dynamics.
barometers and dynamics as to how loud they speak, because all of these questions kind of speak to what turns them off, what may shut them down, what may make them feel afraid or offended. So you want to kind of go back and learn some of these things. Did they feel safe being honest with one another? If they didn't agree with something, did they have the freedom to express their thoughts and opinions, or was it a very authoritative situation? Some of us come from households where mom or dad or whoever ruled with an iron hand, and you were not allowed to speak and give your opinion.
Seen and not heard.
Yes, seen and not heard. So
Yeah, for
depending
sure.
on the type of background you come from, it will definitely have an impact on how you communicate going into your married life.
And not only how you communicate, but how you receive communication.
Right.
Because sometimes, depending on the styles and the culture of your spouse, how you communicate shuts them down. So if you have this conversation and you start learning these things about one another, it will also put you in a place to avoid the pitfalls of communicating in a style that you know is going to have a negative impact on that situation.
So essentially, when you learn that culture and you get this information, what you're actually doing is you're learning to speak their language. And once you get an idea of both cultures and how they come together, now as a couple, you can do the work to establishing your own culture and deciding how will we speak to one another. Now that you know what doesn't work for me, now that you know that whether that's raising your voice or whatever, now that you know what doesn't work for me and what I respond best to, we can now come together to create our own beautiful culture so that we can communicate effectively. Not necessarily that your way or my way was right or wrong, just different.
Right. And at the end of the day, as long as you are listening to understand one another, not necessarily to win an argument, you know, the objective is to listen to understand. And we believe if you take some of these things into play, if you take the time and have a conversation and learn these things about one another, you'll be in a good place to move forward. All right?
That's right.
So again, thank you so
Thank
much for your
you.
question. We ask that, hey, if you have any questions, comments, please continue to send them in. We'd be more than happy to address them. All right?
All right.
So what
Let's
we gonna do?
stay married together.
What he said. God bless.
God bless you.